We have a really awesome sort of surprise announcement that just came out today. This wasn't leaked or anything. This was deliberately put out by the developers working on it. But the team IO, who've been working on the Hitman franchise for years now, is working on a 007 James Bond game. And honestly, we think it could be awesome. So this was a teaser trailer we got today. Basically, it's called Project 007. It is essentially going to be the first origin story being told in video game form, really, or really any medium for James Bond. And it's been a long time since we've gotten a James Bond game. So, and the Hitman team's perfect for it. So, yeah, Max, like this sounds great, right?
So I'm a big James Bond fan. I love all the old novels, as deeply offensive and poorly aged as they are, and I love all the weird campy old movies, and I really adore the modern Daniel Craig ones. And it's interesting because we all think, like, as gamers, like GoldenEye was such a significant game. Like that was one of the first, like, I think that was really the first solid console first person shooter. And that came out alongside GoldenEye the movie, which was weirdly, like,
Sort of
definitely like,
alongside. It was actually about
yeah,
3 years later.
but they're the same story basically.
Yeah.
But it's the whole thing was, uh, GoldenEye was basically like kind of a soft reboot of the whole Bond franchise, because it sort of meandered in the 80s and it was trying to go up against like modern action movies. And as such, like GoldenEye is pretty heavy on the action. Like you can see this trailer is definitely going like action full forward, like very loud explosions, big stuff, bungee jumping, the official sport of 1995. And as such, like a first person shooter kind of reflected that. And we've seen a lot of Bond shooters since then. They're typically like, third person action games or first person, but they always focus mostly on the action side of things, which isn't really the fundamental thing of Bond. Like, obviously, he is, kind of a prototypical action hero, but he's also a spy. Like, he's a secret agent. And there's a certain amount of finesse and, stealth and deception that goes with that. And when you make a game where you're just shooting dudes in the head, that some of that gets kind of like, that goes to the side. Like, that's kind of,
Yeah.
not really it. But you look at Hitman, and that's a series that is, theoretically, it's a game about killing dudes. It's about you're trying to assassinate people, but the way you go about it can be done with all sorts of subterfuge and like weird, kind of creative, opportunities, which seems just so completely perfect for a Bond game.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a franchise that's had like a really interesting kind of storied and very all over the place connection with video games. There have been dedicated racing games or driving games, which focuses on one element of the character in the franchise, and then there's ones that are just straight up shooters. But I think that like IO and what they've done with Hitman makes this the kind of game where I feel like they can really celebrate everything that they're best at the studio, and that is like they have incredibly brilliant, smart level design that you can execute in a number of different ways. And I think that that's what gives you that sort of like, this is how James Bond would operate in this universe type of feeling.
Yeah, I think you look at some of the coolest scenes in Bond movies, aside from like the big action set pieces where he's like, bungee jumping off a bridge and chasing after a plane or doing parkour across like a construction site. You look at like the parts where he's just being like a really cool spy. There's a scene in Quantum of Solace. It's actually right before this where he's going to the opera. And it's I know Quantum of Solace is a divisive one, but like that part where he's just like, he basically is tracking the bad guys and he just kind of like, he basically speed runs sneaking into the opera. Like he, kicks a dude's ass and steals his tuxedo, but then hides his body and breaks the door handle off so no one can find him. And then just, I don't know. It's just like, it's like watching somebody who's really good at, a game like Hitman. And I'm so excited to see how, that team approaches that. And also like, those games they're practically puzzle games because they give you this entire sort of sandbox. They give you an objective, maybe different objectives, optional objectives, whatever. But the point is, they're not like, here's the exact way you're supposed to go about doing this. It's kind of like, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this and you can get weird and creative. And that's always like that's always some of the most interesting stuff in Bond movies, is when he improvises or when he gets something doesn't go right and he has to think on the fly. And that's exciting.
There's also like there's a good sense of humor in the Bond movies. Like they are serious spy thrillers, but they're also kind of funny, right? Like there are like funny moments with gadgets and Bond has his distinct charm and swagger, which leads to a lot of like very funny clips.
Those movies are funny as hell. Like it's often kind of buried, but like there's one, it's the last Sean Connery. It's the one that's the remake. I forget which one it is, but he has a giant knockdown drag out fight in the middle of like a nursing home. And there's all these old people that just aren't noticing it, and it's I don't know. That's the kind of sort of tongue-in-cheek humor where you still have something badass and action-packed happening in the forefront, but there's just a little, just a little wink and a nod happening off to the one
Which
side. And yeah, the
which again,
Hitman games are full of that.
yeah, like I think the IO totally gets that with Hitman. I mean, if you look at like there's like chicken costumes and like clown outfits and stuff like that. Like I don't expect it to go full slapstick, but I do think that they'll be able to embed a little bit of that in there.
Yeah, and the
Now,
fact that it's an origin story is also gives them a huge opportunity to kind of like start fresh. We are seeing Daniel Craig bow out of the Bond role, and they're going to replace him with somebody at some point. But it sounds like that's definitely backburnered. At the very least, they haven't even released No Time to Die because it's no time to die right now. Don't go to the movie theaters. But
yep.
yeah, like this is kind of a cool holdover. I don't know when we're actually going to see it, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
in the same way that like the Arkham games and the Spider-Man kind of exist in their own video game universe. It's so cool to see hopefully Bond getting the same treatment.